Good afternoon and welcome to the Tax Preparation in TWO for Beginner Returns. It is 1:55 and we are going to give everyone time to get logged in, and we'll start promptly at 2 p.m. Once again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. It is 1:58. We will start the webinar promptly at 2 p.m. and just give everybody time to get logged in, and we will begin at 2. Okay, it is 2 p.m. We're going to go ahead and start the webinar. In today's session, we're going to be looking at completing returns in TaxWise Online at a beginner level. over the next month, we're going to be doing these webinars twice a week. We'll have a setup and a configuration webinar, and then each week we're going to rotate out. This week we're going to do beginner, next week will be intermediate returns, the following week will be advanced, and we'll keep rotating those out. So if you miss a webinar, we'll have another one that'll be available for you all through the month. Then starting in November, we're going to start adding more, depending on what's going on, ERO enrollment, new forms when the programs get released for this year. So we're going to try to keep you updated on everything going on in the industry and your program. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about some of the ways that you can communicate with us. In your GoToWebinar console, down at the bottom, you will see a questions box. I have Alexis that's going to be on the webinar with me, and she is going to be monitoring and answering some of your questions throughout the webinar. So ask any questions that you may have, and at the end of the webinar, we'll address some of those questions so everyone can hear, because if one person has that question, there's a good chance somebody else has the same question. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump on over into the program. So when you're ready to start doing your tax preparation, your admin has set up your office, set up your info, and you're ready to do your first tax return. When you log into the program, this is going to be the screen that you land on. This is your dashboard. So you can see here you have your new returns. You can start a new return from here. You can have open return. If you've already started a return, you can open a return from here. It will bring up the dialog box for you to enter the social to find the return that you want to open. You have your check return status. If you've already started electronically filing returns, we all know in the life cycle of an e-file, there's different statuses it's going to be in throughout that life cycle, from at the IRS to accepted to rejected. So this is a quick way for you to be able to look at the status of returns. This is where you go to print checks and print your accepted returns. One of the things I do like to point out is, how do you train your employees, or train yourself for that matter, if you're changing to a new software? The best way to learn a program, of course, is by attending webinars or trainings, but also to get in that program and key as many returns as you can. And we like to provide you with some returns that you can key. So just to show you guys where you can go to access some practice returns, you can click on the little question mark up in the top right hand corner of your screen, and you can access it this way. But you can also just go to support.taxwise.com, and it'll take you here, and what you'll do is scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you'll see that there's going to be practice returns there for you. We have the beginner returns, we have intermediate returns, as well as the advanced returns. Also, you have an answer key, but I do like to point out that sometimes they're not right, because they only update the answer key at the beginning of each season. So what you enter in now may not show correctly, but it will for the new season that it comes out. So just a FYI there, but this is a good way for you to start keying in returns, or any preparers that you have. What better way to get familiar with your software than to get in there and key in some returns? So you have access to these. Again, they can be found at support.taxwise.com. So you can access them there, and you can actually just download the PDFs to a desktop and have access to them all the time. So let's jump back over here to the program. So we're ready to start our very first return. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up here and click on tax returns. It will give you a list of any tax returns that you've already started. To start a new return, I'm going to click right here. Over in the right-hand side of your screen, you have new return. Now, once you click on that, it's going to bring up the start new return dialog box. Now, as you can see here, it asks you for the social and also for you to confirm that social security number. So I'm going to key in the social. And let's try that one more time. 109812593. Once I key it in, I will go back and rekey it for confirmation, because it's very important that you make sure you're getting the social security number right. If you don't, it's going to cause a reject. So once you've keyed it in and you've confirmed it, one of the things I want to show down here is apply for an item. So if they don't have a social security number and you need to apply for an item for them, a taxpayer identification number, you can click on that and you can apply for one. You also have two more options. You have the ability to go to tax forms. That'll take you into the actual forms mode where you can complete the return. And then you also have go to interview. For this example, we're going to go into the tax forms, but inside the tax forms, you can have it set up in defaults to automatically add an interview sheet. So you're in the tax forms, but you can still use that interview sheet to help newer preparers, because they can select they have this, this, or this, and it'll load those forms for them automatically. So once I click on go to tax forms, you'll notice, here we go, there's the first issue. The social security numbers did not match. So it wants me to change them, make sure that they're correct. So we'll go back up here and let's do this one more time. 109812593. And then let's confirm it. Once it's correct and you click on go, you'll see that it's going to think, and then it's going to load the forms and take you into the tax return. Now, just to talk about your work area here. So you'll notice over to the left-hand side, the very top thing that you see here is the Refund Monitor. As you're completing this return and you go from form to form, this will refresh and show you whether or not they are, at that point in time, getting a refund or not. Below that, you have your forms tree. This is going to show you everything that's automatically loaded in the return. So these are the forms that we have in this return right now. Now, as you're going through and you're answering different the tax return, forms are going to automatically load something, and the program knows, because the way you answered that, this form is required. Anything that starts with W there for you. If you want, you don't have to add forms that way at all. What we're going to do is we're just going to go in and we're going to complete this tax return. You always want to start off by completing your main information sheet. The information that you put here on this form will flow to the appropriate forms in the return. So it keeps you from having to rekey information. So whatever you put here will flow to your 1040, it'll flow to your state, it'll flow to bank apps. Any other forms that are in there, the information you input here will flow there. We're going to go ahead and start off with salutation. So if you want to mark, it's not a required field. You do not have to answer this, but if you want to, you are more than welcome to put a salutation. Now, one of the things too we'll show here is the field colors here. You'll notice that this is red. Red means it is required. You have to have something in this field to electronically file it. If you don't, you will have errors, okay? Also, in your forms tree here, you'll see the exclamation point. That lets you know that there's something on that form that is not complete. Once a form is complete, it'll turn green with the green check mark to let you know that all the required information for that particular form has been answered. So in this return, we're going to make this a test return. And as you go along, as you start answering questions, you'll notice that fields that were previously not required becomes required based on the information you entered in before. So on the main information sheet, this is just really getting the demographic information for your taxpayer, their name, filing status, addresses, telephone numbers, things like that. You just want to come through and answer any and everything that is required. So definitely have to have an address. And you'll notice that it takes you to the zip code field, because in the program, once you enter in the zip code and you tab off of that field, it'll automatically populate the city and state for you. This is huge in saving you time when it comes to completing tax returns. Believe it or not, saving 10, 12, 15 keystrokes per return can help speed up the amount of returns you are able to complete in a day. Telephone numbers, you definitely want to put in telephone numbers for your taxpayer. It gives you the ability to contact them as well as the IRS if they need to. Date of birth. Once you enter in the date of birth, you'll notice the field below it will automatically calculate their age. May not sound important underneath the taxpayer themselves, unless maybe they're a little older, whether they qualify, for certain credits and things for somebody over the age of 65, things like that. But where that is really important is down if you have dependents, because we all know when it comes to dependents, they qualify for certain things, EIC, child tax credit, and based on the age is whether or not they qualify for it. So it really is a very useful tool to have that in your program. Now, it is a required field that you put in their occupation. What does this taxpayer do? And you'll notice anything that is not required at this point in time, you do not have to fill. So a lot of people look at this and say, oh gosh, that's a lot of information to input. But if it's not required, you do not have to answer it. Also, it's very important for the setup. If you have your program set up properly and you have your tax form defaults properly, it will pull information. So some of the questions that are required that you can go ahead and answer in your tax form defaults, for example, are like, are you excluding Puerto Rico income from this tax return? Well, if you know that you're in an area that you've never seen anybody that was excluding Puerto Rico income, you could go ahead and default that no. For example, as you can see here, mine is already answered. I default that no because in my area, I would be lucky if I have one person that come in that is excluding Puerto Rico income. So underneath the next place in the main information sheet that we're going to be looking at is the filing status and exemption. So this is where you're going to mark whether they're single, married filing joint, married filing separate, head of household, or qualifying widower. So you simply mark the appropriate. And once you do, you'll notice they're all required, but once I put in an answer, the other fields that were required are now not required. So you can see as you're answering, you're entering, certain fields are going to become required and others will be not required after you answer the field. Below that is where you would put in any dependents if they had dependents on this tax return. State information. This is another great way to save time. If you are in a state that has a state income tax, that's something else you can put in your tax form defaults. As you can see, mine automatically pulled the state of Georgia. I also have mine defaulted to e-file only. But if you know that you do 90% of bank products, you can default it to the bank product, mark your bank, and that's automatically there and loaded for you as well. Below that, you have your bank information. If they want to do a direct deposit product, you have your fields here for their routing number and their account number. Those pins, I always suggest using the Practitioner Pen Method. By doing that, you do not have to hand the actual keyboard over to the client or the taxpayer in your office and let them key it in. You can key it in for them. And also, if you do it that way, it does not require last year's AGI or the pen that they used on last year's return. Below that, you would want to have your information pull in here, and it will, once you put it in on your 8879, it should automatically flow. You want to put in the day's date, and one of the things I do like to talk about here is if you create an electronic file and it sits there for longer than 10 days, it's going to get stale. And if you go to try to file it, it's going to tell you, no, you're going to have to go back in and re-verify the return, update the date, and recreate the e-file. Below that is identification verification. So most of the time when you have a taxpayer in your office, they're probably going to show you a state ID, a driver's license, or some type of a state ID that's issued. As you can see here, I went ahead and defaulted mine to provide the driver's license number. So once I mark that, you'll notice now that the fields for driver's license number is required, as well as the date that it was issued and the expiration date. Because I'm in the state of Georgia and 90% of the returns I do is a Georgia driver's license, I also went ahead and defaulted Georgia there. So as you can see, those tax form defaults can get very, very great for you when it comes to what you're having to key in. All those keystrokes that you can save inside each individual tax return saves you precious time, and we all know how time flies by during tax season. So if you can save them, put it in your tax form defaults. And I'll put in the expiration date and the date issued. Now, also, one of the things too, I want to point out, this is an online program, so you're using your browser. If you hit enter, it's going to close out of that form. So the best way to navigate through these fields is to use your tab keys, or you can use, your page up and down keys to jump sections, but don't hit enter, because if you do, it's going to close the form. So as we're going down through, we're just going to get the red out of the tax return. We're going to answer anything that is required. Now, once our main information sheet is complete, one of the ways that you can complete the tax return, and as you can see over in my forms tree, is I have the interview sheet in my forms list. I added that in my defaults. This is really, really helpful, especially for newer preparers in your tax office, because they may not necessarily know form names, form numbers. What the interview sheet does for them, it gives them the ability to come down and say, okay, let's look at this. And ask, they can kind of interview their taxpayer, do you have wages or salary? And if they say, yes, they do have. They simply check mark that yes, and it will load a W-2 for them. So anything down through here that is pertinent that the taxpayer has, once they mark that question yes, it will automatically load that into the tax return for them. So let's go ahead and let's add something else. Let's say maybe they paid some interest on a student loan. So let's find the student loan information. Let's see. I know I'm overlooking it here somewhere. Let's see here. There we go. Did you pay interest on higher education loans? So you'll notice, I want you to see, once I mark that, it automatically loads worksheet 2, and you'll notice it's red. So once I go down to my next form, you're going to enter in. It's going to ask you, how much did they pay in interest? They're going to have their form with them. So you just simply put in whether or not it was for the taxpayer or the spouse. For this one, it's a single return. So we'll say they paid in $250 in interest. And that is all you have to do. Put in the total and we're good to go. So you'll see this now has a green check mark by it. That's one of the ways that you can complete the return, by using that interview sheet. Experienced preparers, they don't necessarily want to use the interview sheet, and you do not have to. If you know what form it is that you need, you can add that at any time. So you can add a form like we showed up earlier. You can click on the add a form list. There's also another way that you can work your tax return. A lot of our experienced preparers know they just want to go straight down their Form 1040. So they start at box 7. And what you can do is once you click in a field, you'll see there's a little arrow beside it. Once you click on that arrow, it's going to bring you up a link, and it will let you link to other forms. And when you click on that, it will bring up a link box, and in that link box it will give you any form that can link back to this particular field. So we already have a W-2 in our tax return. We can see it right here. So it's showing you what's already linked here. But if you click on the new, it will show you all the forms. So this is all the different forms that once you complete it, flow back to box 7. So you can come and work your return this way. Simply go down and go from line to line. Use your linking feature, select the form that you need to get to, complete it, and it will flow back the information to that particular line. So that is another way that you can go through and complete this tax return. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply go down through here, and I know I need to complete my W-2. Now, and the easiest way I like to talk about input when it comes to entering in W-2 information, I mean, it really is heads down data entry. You're looking at the form they gave you, and you're simply entering in what's on that piece of paper, that W-2 in front of you, into your system. But it is nice to make sure, that you let them know, yes, this is definitely something that you need to make sure that you're verifying. So once you enter it in, make sure you look and make what you've entered matches what you have on your W-2. So the very first thing that's required is check if the taxpayer's address is shown correctly on the W-2. So it shows you here, it's pulled in from the main information sheet. But if the W-2 that you have in your hand does not match, you would need to select check and make changes. My example, it is correct. So I can simply select that it's verified, it's correct. I don't need to make any changes. Next is going to be where you'll enter in their employer ID number. Now, one of the great things about this program is it has the EIN database. So as you're entering in tax returns, if another taxpayer comes in and they worked at the same place, you're not going to have to rekey in that employer's name, address, city, state, zip. All you have to do is enter in that EIN. So for example here, my EIN that I've entered in before. So once I enter it in again, you'll see that once I hit enter or tab, it must have been in a different username. It usually automatically populates, but I'm in the admin username and I had completed my other returns in my username. So let me go ahead and enter this in, but I will load another W-2 and show this example again. Okay, so same thing here, zip code locator. You enter in the zip code, and once you tab away, it will automatically populate your city and state for you. Again, I'm looking right at my W-2. I'm entering in exactly how it's entered on my form. Now, one of the things I do like to point out here is we all know sometimes we miskey things. We have, you hit a key and you've accidentally hit 2. One of the really great things about this program too is if you enter in an outrageous number. So let's just say they have $3,944 withheld, but let's say I hit a double key or something and I hit enter. Once I tab away from that field, you'll notice that now one of the questions up above is now turned required. Well, why is that? Well, let's read it. Well, it wants you to please verify the federal withholding, Social Security withholding, Medicare withholding, because it exceeds Pub 15. So as you can see, we can understand why, because they had $38,000 in income and they have $344,000 in withholding. So that's a problem there. So that's another great safe point, that it's going to make sure that you're verifying the information. I know that there's lots of times that I miskey things, and that is so easy to do, but the program kind of checks to make sure that it is correct. So we know that was not right, so we want to go in and put in the correct amount, and once we do, you'll notice that it will take that away. Now, one of the things I don't think I pointed out yet is you'll notice I was putting in cents. The program's going to automatically round up for you or round down. So if it's 49 cents below, it'll round it down. If it's 50 and above, it'll round it up. So you don't have to worry about that. The program does it for you automatically. So the next section on my W-2 that has something is going to be under box 12. And one of the things that I definitely know that falls into this category is that if they paid into a 401k, something like that. But again, heads down data entry, you're entering in. On my W-2, it has the code DD for disbursement, and they've paid in $1,315.34. And I'm done. Below that, if they have state information on the bottom of their W-2, you simply enter that in. Now, once I put in the state ID, you'll notice that it automatically pulled down the wages for you. You didn't have to rekey that in. It pulled down automatically from box 1. Enter in the ID number for the state. And the only other thing that we have to do is put in how much state income tax that they had paid in. See, that's a mistake right there too. So always make sure that you're double checking what you enter in. That decimal point makes a huge difference. So now our W-2 is complete, and you'll notice again, we have our green check mark. So now what you want to do is you simply want to come through and get the red out. You want to make sure that all the forms are check marked off. So on this example, we also know we have to say how they had medical insurance all year. How were they covered? So that's going to be reported on your ACA form. So in this example, this gentleman was employed all year, and he received all of his health insurance through his employer. So that makes it really, really easy. So every single one that you do, you have to answer the first 2 fields. Did the taxpayer, spouse, or any dependent receive insurance through the marketplace? Well, we know by this example that this taxpayer did not, because he had received his benefits through his employer. So that would be no. Was the taxpayer, spouse, or any dependent granted a marketplace exemption, or do you want to apply for any of the exemptions? Well, because he was covered all year, we don't need to apply for anything. So again, that would be no. And below that is basically how were they covered? So they had the minimum essential coverage all year long. And now that form is completed. So you can see how easy and quickly, I mean, it looks like a lot of information, but it's really not. You're going through and having to answer maybe a few things on each form. Now, one of the things I do want to go ahead and show you is going to be here on the 8879. Now, a lot of this will pull over automatically because you're going to do all your setup right. You're going to have your tax form defaults or your templates completed. So a lot of this is going to be completed. It's going to automatically pull in for you. But on this example, let's put in my PTIN because apparently I didn't put it in my tax form default, so it's causing me more keystrokes. So I put in the firm's name, the EIN, the address, phone number, and lastly, the zip code, and again, it populates the city and state for you. So as you'll notice, a while ago, my main information sheet never was check marked off because it was requiring more information because I didn't have my info down here. But when I fill it in here, it automatically flow back to my main information sheet. So when I go back here down to the ERO information, it's pulled in now from my 8879. So now this form is completed as well. So once you get all the red out of your return, the next thing that you want to do is run diagnostics. And the easiest way to explain the diagnostics to you is it checks the return. Certain things the IRS require for every electronic file. That's what the red fields are. Anything red, the IRS is saying we have to have this info. There has to be something in this field. So running diagnostics checks that and makes sure that everything that's required is there. Now, it's not going to catch a miskey. So if you miskeyed something, but there's still something in that field, that's not going to stop it from going. But what will stop it from going anywhere is if you have nothing at all in a required field. So once I click on diagnostics, here's what it's going to look like. If you have errors, you'll have different sections. You have errors, you have warnings, and you have overridden entries. The only thing that will stop you from being able to electronically file this return are the errors. Warnings, you can still send it. It's just letting you know, hey, you may want to recheck this because this is, it's off a little. So here on our errors, it says on the main information sheet, a bank has been selected, but the bank products box is not checked. So that's a problem. There's required information here. So once I click on that link, it will take me back to that form, to the area that's causing the problem. So we said we had a bank marked, but we have it marked as e-file. So that was the issue, okay? Now if I run diagnostics again, you'll see my errors are now gone. Well, what I'm going to do is, just for some time-saving purposes, I want to go ahead and just open a return that's complete. So I'm just going to simply save and close this one. And I'm going to open up, I believe John Hammond's the complete return. Okay, so this return's already completed. You can see everything is going to be green. Well, the price may not necessarily, and it doesn't have to be, because depending on how you have your price sheet set up. So let's talk about that. If you have your price sheet set up that you're just charging one flat amount, maybe you charge $150 on your form 1040, and all the others are zero. Well, what's going to do is, because we have a W-2 in here and it's zero, it's just there to remind you, hey, did you mean to put something in here? But if it's not and you're just charging one flat fee, then you're good to go. All of our other forms are now check marked off. They're green, so we know everything's completed. There's nothing else required. So when I run diagnostics this time, it only shows me we have no errors, our warnings. It lets us know on our W-2, the EIN, this, that, but it's a warning. Again, it's not going to stop you. It'll also show any overridden entries or any estimated entries. So we know that this is okay, we can go ahead and create the e-file. So once you're ready to create that e-file, you would click on Create e-file. Over to the side, once that e-file is created, it'll let you know that it is created successfully. Now at this point, if you want to, you can go ahead and print off the return. That's fine if you're ready. After you print off the return, if you want to add a client letter, this is where you would do so. You could go up here and click on your client letters. Now we can see, let me close this out, based on our refund monitor. So you can see here in our refund monitor, it says right now they have a refund coming in the amount of $229. You want to see more detailed information. You click on Return Summary. That is a link right there. Once you click on it, it will give you more information. So it gives you their earned income, their AGI, their taxable income, and of course it shows the refund due. Once you're ready to roll and you want to add the client letter, you would want to select the client letter you want to add. So if you have created your custom templates, you can add one of your custom ones, or we have ones that's automatically built in the program. So I know that I want to select my 1040 refund letter. So once I do so and I click print letter, it will bring up the PDF for you to go ahead and print that out. If you printed out your tax return first, that's all great. It's going to be on your printer, and then your client letter will print out on top. Now, just because you've clicked on the e-file doesn't mean the returns went anywhere yet. You still have another step that you have to do, and it's kind of in a separate area. So once you're ready to actually send this tax return, you will want to click on the e-filing link at the top of your screen. Here is where you're going to go to submit any electronic files. Okay, so it's a two-step process. You create the e-file inside the tax return, but you still have to go and send it. So to do so, I would simply come out, click on Submit e-files. It will show me all the returns sitting out there that are ready to be electronically filed. And this is another thing that I like to point out. You'll notice here that there's two different e-files for John Hammond. Well, because of the new modernized e-filing, you know, at one time they bundled them all together and they both went at the same time. You know, we sent the state and the federal at the same time. Well, now states will not accept the returns until the federal has been accepted. So that's why there's two separate ones. So you wouldn't be able to select the state form until you have an approval or an acceptance from the IRS on the federal. So once you're ready to send this return, or all your returns, you can come in and put a check mark and it'll select all the ones you have sitting here, or you can individually pick which returns you want to send. Once you do that, you would simply click on Continue, and your return's now been sent off to the IRS. With modernized e-filing, we know that they get acknowledged pretty quickly. So it may be a couple of seconds, maybe a couple of minutes, just depending on how busy they are. After that, you come back and send the state return. And that's it. That's really a basic 1040 return. Very, very basic. So with that, we'll go ahead and close up. And Alexis, did we have any questions?
Hey, Ellen, no, we actually haven't really had any questions this webinar. If anybody has any, feel free to type it in that chat box and we'd happy to get you an answer right now.
Yes, anything that you have.
Nope, it's looking like
Well,
everybody's feeling good.
that tells me I did a really good job, or nobody was paying attention to me. I'm going to go with the first part.
Okay, wait, hold on one second. We're getting a couple of questions in.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, it looks like we do have one question here regarding this coming change
Thank
with the bank. As far as that, please just continue monitoring your emails. We are expecting our bank enrollments to open up, if not tomorrow, next week. So as soon as we have any information regarding that, we will send you over an email along with steps on how to complete that.
I see one of the questions, has anything changed since last year? Well, there are going to be some changes, but we're not going to be able to show those to you until the new software comes out. But there are changes. I know this coming year, there's no 1040 EZ, there's no 1040A. It's all strictly 1040. I think there's going to be more worksheets. But once we get the program and I get in there and get to play around in it, we're going to do a webinar on new things in the program as well.
And Georgia, I see your question regarding if you have preparers who are not allowed to e-file a return, how do they put it in that review status? Typically,
Mhm.
when you're ready
I
to
can
do
share
that, I
that with
recommend
you.
you doing stages. Go ahead.
Um, the best way to tell your preparers when they're completed with the return, and maybe they don't electronically file their returns, you have somebody review it. I would go ahead and in your training of your employees or your preparers, get them in the habit of clicking at the end of completing the return on this return summary. Because while they're in the return, they can assign it a return stage. So if it's complete and it's ready for review, they can select that from a pick list because you'll have it built and close. Now, when I go back out to my tax returns screen where it displays all my tax returns, we can see that now I have one sitting there that says it's ready for review. That goes for anything. So if you have one that's maybe you're waiting on additional information, things like that, you have the ability to just go down through and select it. But if it's for a preparer, they need to mark it as for review or anything else for that matter. The easiest way to tell them and get them in the habit of it is while they're inside the tax return. It's thinking about it. Here we go. Clicking on Return Summary in the Refund Monitor and assigning it there. Great question. Anything else, Alexis?
Yeah, it looks like we've got another question. As far as next year's tax software, that's going to be released around Thanksgiving. It's normally the third week of November. If you're using the online, it'll automatically update, and when you go to log into your platform, that'll be the year that pulls up. For desktop, at that point, we'll go ahead and give you the desktop download so you can get that working. As far as transferring everything over, you'll be able to carry forward your return templates. All of your client information will feed in, so it'll automatically populate those new returns you're starting as well. And it looks like we've got one last one. Ellen, will you go ahead and cover where to access the practice returns again?
I sure will. So to access the practice returns, you can open up your web browser and simply go to support, .taxwise.com. So let me just show you. So once you go here, underneath Prepare Solutions, you'll see the very top hyperlink in the second column underneath that is TaxWise Online Onboarding Library. So anything else you need from out here, click on a topic. It'll help you. But below at the very bottom here, you've got your practice returns. You've got your beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Just to show you what happens, if I click on it, it'll bring up a download. and you can download it to your desktop. So you don't have to print it out. You can do it that way and have access to it all the time without having to go back each time to the support site. Okay, anything else?
Nope, that appears to be it.
Okay, with that, guys, we'll go ahead and conclude today's session. Again, thank you so much for attending. We do record our webinars and we will post them out on our YouTube page. And we're building a frequently asked questions document. So any questions that's asked in here, we're going to go through and we're going to take the ones that get asked most often and put them into a frequently asked questions document, and we'll get that out to everyone too. So again, thank you so much for your time, and if you need us, you know how to get in touch with us. Check out our Facebook page. We have more webinars coming up, and we will post them there as well. Thank you so much.